The dead are never far away, always watching, always listening. Welcome to Darkness Comes Creeping and Chapter 4 of The Wraith. Tonight we meet a lost soul, a detective in search of the truth, in a place where villagers smile in the sunshine but whisper in the dark. A drop of rain trickled down his neck, causing Paul O'Farrell to shiver. It was not just its icy touch that filled him with unease, but the encounter with the driver of the red car. He had seen that look before, countless times, and it was hard to forget. In a way, it mirrored how he felt. It spoke of sadness, loneliness, and the absence of hope. Cursing under his breath for not being quick enough to note her registration, he climbed into his car. The interior felt damp. He turned on the engine and waited for the heater to warm up. Sighing, he adjusted the rear-view mirror and shook his head in disgust at the face staring back at him. Bags under his eyes were put there by lack of sleep and the over-familiarity with the whiskey bottle. Though never a heavy drinker, like so many of his colleagues who used alcohol to deaden the pain of things they were forced to witness, it had become a companion of sorts over the past 18 months. Losing Maura, his wife of 38 years to cancer, hit him hard. While his days were filled with emptiness, he still had a job to do, but the nights. At first he had tried to fill the endless hours cleaning the house, copying the chores he had once taken for granted, but he soon gave up as the repeated monotony of the work started to get him down. Now the furniture lay under a cloud of dust. The clutter had begun to accumulate. The truth was, he didn't have the heart for it. And other than the greasy, stodgy meals he ate in the staff canteen, he never bothered to cook at home. These days his dinner consisted of peanuts and crisps, washed down with copious amounts of whiskey. Sometimes the gods were kind, and the effects of the alcohol, added to exhaustion, meant he could get some sleep, even if he woke stiff and sore in the chair next morning. Mostly, it went to the other extreme. He became hyper, wandered the house, cursed his luck and the emptiness of his life. His 2 sons, married with families of their own, had little time for him. Other than a card at Father's Day and Christmas, he never heard from them. And the reassurance they offered on the day of the funeral, that they were only a phone call away, meant nothing. If only they'd had a daughter, things might have been different. Girls were caring, not as quick to abandon those they loved. Blinking and wiping his eyes, he put the car in gear and headed out of the forecourt. Being the only sergeant in the station meant he had to muddle in with the men on the beat, and since crime in the village was of the petty type, he faced days of reruns, interviewing the same old faces for the same old crime. The small council estate spawned its fair share of criminals, and this was where he was headed now, to answer a report of domestic violence. With a bit of luck, they'll have killed one another by the time I get there, he thought, steering the car down the main street and up the hill. As usual, the roads were littered with beer cans and broken bottles. Bedraggled horses tied to fence poles stared back at him, sodden manes clinging to their necks, and long faces looking as glum as he felt. Steering from left to right, he managed to avoid most of the potholes and the odd hooded figure that ran across his path before pulling to the curb. The sound of battle could be heard as soon as he opened his door. He walked, shoulders slumped, down the weed-covered path. The handle had fallen off the letterbox, and as there was no doorbell, he rapped with his fist on the wood. His first knock went unanswered, the noise inside drowning it out. He waited a moment before balling his hand into a tight fist and pounding with all his might. The sound was enough to bring the screaming down to a sudden halt. Taking a deep breath, he waited as fumbling fingers struggled with the lock. "You took your fucking time," the harridan who threw open the door roared. Her beery breath made him draw back a little as she tottered towards him. He placed a hand against her shoulder in case she fell. "What seems to be the trouble?" Always one to go by the book, he winced as he asked the same stupid question. Mona and Pat Cusack were famous for their rows. Had the weather been more clement, they'd be keeping most of the street entertained by now. But no one had braved the rain and cutting wind, not even for a laugh. Those who lived within hearing distance of the couple had little to laugh about themselves. Paul knew most of the residents were drawing unemployment, and subsidising it with shoplifting and petty thievery. The only shop in the estate was forced to close. Stock disappeared as fast as it was placed on the shelves. The owner, no genius, soon realised his accounts didn't tally, and after threats of violence, he shut up shop. Are you fucking listening to me? Yes, Mona. He shooed her back inside the house and stepped into the stale-smelling hall. The linoleum on the floor was torn, jagged-looking tufts sticking up here and there. Dust gathered on its surface, providing a sort of Velcro effect, and he lifted his feet from its pull with a resounding squelch. The stairs were plain boards, the wood stained from countless encounters with drunken hands and feet. The banisters, someone had tried to paint them white, were peeling. He was about to follow the woman into the front room when a small sob from overhead made him look up. Two small children stared down at him, their eyes bright with tears and terror. Though he realised the little boy and girl were of school age, it would be useless to protest their absence. Any suggestion would only serve to antagonise the battling couple. It was afternoon, but the children were still in pyjamas. The girl's hair stood on end, a rat's nest of knots. It's all right, Paul motioned them to go back to their rooms. We're hungry, the boy whined, and his sister nodded in agreement. The sound of battle started again. He left them, promising something to eat when he finished. The heat in the front room was stifling. A huge fire roared in the grate. Pat Cusick sat on one of the chairs, a beer resting on the arm, his legs stretched out in front of him. This is all I fucking need, he snorted. Your wife made a complaint about you. Paul tried to ignore the burning dryness in his throat and the smell of the bubbling foam. So what? Pat sneered. She's always fucking complaining about something, stupid bitch. This comment was aimed at his wife, who sat opposite him, and for a woman in such an inebriated condition, her aim was accurate. The beer can she was holding caught her husband on the forehead. His roar of rage, more at the waste of good liquor than the assault, sent him springing from his chair. Only Paul's hand on his collar saved Mona from a beating, as her husband was dragged back to the chair. Give it over, Paul roared, looking from one to the other. Any more of this and I'm taking you to the station. Fucking bitch. Pat was too busy wiping his face with a seat cushion to notice what was said. I mean it. Paul pulled the cushion from his hands. I'm sick and tired of coming here to break you two up. If you can't get on with one another, why don't you part company? Mona sneered. Listen to him, Mr. fucking know-it-all. Why don't you fuck off back to the station and leave us alone? You called me here, remember? Yeah, well now I'm telling you to fuck off. She struggled out of her chair and made a swipe at him. All her anger was transferred from her husband to him. Give it over. He caught her arm, twisted her around and threw her back into the chair. Hey, that's not on, her husband roared, but made no attempt to come to her rescue. No, and all this is not on either. I'm sick and tired of acting as a referee between people like you. People like us, Mona laughed. Listen to his fucking lordship. Who the fuck do you think you are? Up and listen. The next time you ring for assistance, you won't get it. You can kill one another for all I care. But there are 2 young children up there. They need feeding, and it's your job to do it. There's plenty of food in the kitchen. They know where it is if they want it. Really? He walked down the hall to the kitchen. This too was freezing, but the cold was welcome after the stifling heat of the front room. He tried not to think of how cold the bedrooms upstairs must feel. He drew back at the stench wafting from the fridge when he opened the door. The wire shelves had been removed. Other than a small mountain of cheap beer, a half carton of out-of-date milk, and some dry mouldy carrots, there was nothing. The presses that lined the wall were the same. His attempt at foraging did little other than disturb a colony of ants, sweeping over spilled sugar and gravy mix. The children's eyes searched his face as he emerged. When they saw he was empty-handed, the boy's lip trembled, but his sister shushed him and waited. I'll get you something to eat, he smiled at them. As he drove down the hill to the takeaway, he smiled, remembering his wife's teeth. You think you can change the world single-handed, she always said, and she was right, especially when it came to children in need. Before he got out of the car, he made a note to contact social services. These children needed proper food and schooling, and they were not going to get it where they were. The smell of the 2 white bundles pervaded the car's interior as he drove back. While the vinegary aroma of the chips was appetizing, he had no stomach for food. His insides felt raw from the whiskey, and a sharp pain in his side told him his liver was also feeling the effects. Pat opened the door and snatched the bundles of food from him. "They're for the children," Paul warned. "Yeah, whatever." He closed the door before Paul could protest further. He listened for the sound of footfalls on the stairboards, but when there was none, he inched his way along the small path to the window at the front room. The couple were sitting exactly as he left them, but the glare of the white paper spread across both their laps incensed him, and he pounded on the glass. "Those were meant for the children," he roared. Pat picked up one of the hamburgers and wiggled it at him, before stuffing it into his mouth. Mona dropped her bundle to the floor and staggered to the window. Lifting the latch, she opened it just enough for him to hear. "If you're so fucking worried about children, why don't you find the ones that are missing?" "Yeah," her husband sneered. "You didn't do such a good job then, did you, you cunt?" He heard them laughing as he walked back to the car. His hand shook as he tried to place the key in the ignition. But despite the coarseness of their words, he knew they were right. He was a failure. We end here for tonight, my friends, but the story does not rest, and neither do the dead. Paul O'Farrell believes he is drowning alone, but the darkness has already chosen him as a witness. So until next week, my friends, stay safe, and don't forget to share and subscribe so I know that you're out there listening.